Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. We're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before, and I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years. A few different styles, but I think it's fair to say that back in the day, this brewery was known mainly for its kind of hazy New England IPAs, but also for their fruity IPAs as well. But in more recent times, they've been doing quite a few nice kind of pastry sours and also sweet stouts. So it's always nice to see what these guys are putting out there these days. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a new release from them. It's a style that we haven't had from them yet, and in truth, it's a sub-style that you don't come across all that often over here in Europe. But when I consider what these guys have done in the past, I think this is a sub-style that they'll be very, very good at. So my curiosity was piqued when I saw this one being released. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to the northwest of me here in Lund to Helsingborg, a lovely city that I do recommend you visit if you get the chance, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Brewski Mikrobryggeri. So this particular beer is called the Floripa. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and as the name suggests, this one is a Florida IPA. So yeah, this beer was released as part of the local småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for December of 2021. And for those of you that are not familiar with the Florida IPA as a style, what it tends to be is like a sort of wheaty based IPA, but then on top of that, you've got this kind of citricy tart, sour sort of thing out of it. Breweries like J. Wakefield would be prime examples of breweries that make this particular style. But yeah, the Florida IPA is not something you find commonly over here in Sweden actually, or in Europe generally speaking. The last one I can think of that I had was actually by Mulli's Kvartalbryggeri in Eskilstuna, and that must be about over a year since I reviewed that particular beer, maybe even longer actually. So yeah, this one really piqued my interest, as I say, when I saw it coming through Systembolaget. But when you consider the Fever series that Brewski did or have been doing for a number of years, I think this is a style of beer that they will do very well. So hopefully they stick with this and do a few more things with it. But yeah, let's crack on then and see how we get on with this beer. Always nice to return to Brewski. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brewski Mikrobryggeri before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to at the moment because I am back over in Sweden for a little while. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Brewski Mikrobryggeri then. So, Brewski Mikrobryggeri, as I've told you before, was founded back in 2014, and they're based in Helsingborg in the northwestern part of Skåne here in the very south of Sweden. So the founders of the company are Marcus Hjalmarsson, Johan Britsen, Alfred Olsen and Robin Skoglund, and all of these guys were inspired to get into brewing their own craft beer, having seen the evolution of the American West Coast craft beer scene. But Marcus was originally associated with the High Nose brand of beer, which was brewed at Höganäs Brewery out on the Kullaberg Peninsula, just to the northwest of Helsingborg once again. And the High Nose brewing beers are still brewed out there, but all of the Brewski beers are now brewed at their own brewery in Helsingborg, which is to the south of the central station in the old train yard. And this brewery apparently has the capacity to brew around 100,000 litres of beer per month at maximum. But a few years later, in 2016, they started their own beer festival called Brewskival. In the first year, they had over 40 different breweries there, and it's continually expanded year on year. The first year that I went was 2017, and I think I've been there 3 years after that, if memory serves me correctly. But they also used to open their brewery up once a month as a bar called Brewski, and this eventually evolved to the bar in Helsingborg Central, which goes by the same name, and this opened back in 2018. You can get some really nice Japanese ramen there actually, and if you're interested to see what Brewski in Helsingborg looks like, you can check out my out and about video that I filmed there. That was maybe at the start of 2021 that I filmed that actually, so do make sure you go and check that out. But these guys are also now brewing some of their beers over in the US at Tampa Bay Brewing Company in Florida, which is probably one of the reasons why they're having a go at brewing a Florida IPA, come to think of it. And they're also at the moment looking to open up a bar in Oslo, and Marcus has a distribution company up in Norway called Brewski, which imports Swedish beers into Norway. So I'm hoping that he starts to bring some of the other ones down here to Sweden through Systembolaget, so I can get hold of a few different Norwegian things. But they are apparently they are in the stages of planning a bar in Helsinki over in Finland, and also one in Copenhagen in Denmark as well actually. So quite exciting times for Brewski going forward. But at the moment, these guys are producing on average of 350,000 litres of beer per year, and as of December 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 375 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But they are one of the best known Skånsk craft breweries here in Sweden, and yeah, they're known mainly for their big fruity IPAs. The Fever series was very, very popular from these guys back in the day, and in recent times they've got the Pie series, which is like a nice kind of pastry sour. Those beers are lovely. They've also got the Cake series, which are big pastry sweet stouts, and you get a few other things from them as well. But this one just caught my eye because you don't come across all that many Florida IPAs actually. But I hope that Brewski are going to produce a few more of these actually, because I think it would be nice to see this style get a little bit more recognition over here. And it's again about having a little bit more diversity in the beer scene, of course. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Brewski Mikrobryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer then. So, just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, the style of artwork is pretty similar to what we've seen from Brewski in the past. So yeah, looks very nice. There you can see the crocodile with the mango. So this one is actually a Florida IPA with mango added into it. And there you can see on this side of the beer, there is Floripa. If the camera's going to focus on that, I'm not sure if it will. Maybe the condensation's getting in the way. It's been a bit funny just now. But yeah, there you can see the little Brewski man at the bottom of the can, and there you can see just above it, Floripa. But yeah, 330ml can, this one. I believe this beer cost me in the region of 40 Swedish kroner, so that translates to about €4, £3.25 sterling, something like that, and maybe in the region of like $4.50 American. But yeah, that's everything we really need to say in terms of visuals on this. But as we said, this is the Floripa, 6.5% sour Florida IPA with mango added into it. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm very, very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. So let's go for it and see what we get. We'll be able to put the whole beer, I think, into the glass with this one. So there we are. All right. So, yeah, there we are. So, oh, this looks quite interesting. So, before the head disappears on this beer, you can see it poured with about a finger of quite a bumpy, but kind of white, creamy coloured head there. That is going to fade away very, very quickly, though, in fact. Yeah, already just fading away. Not sure exactly why that is, but one thing I should point out is that this beer, it contains barley, wheat, and oat malt, actually. So, it's not a million miles away from a New England IPA in some sense, but I guess the thing that gives the beer the sourness will be the fruit, and it'll also be some of the yeast strains that they use, of course. But yeah, you can see the head on this beer's just faded away to be a kind of nice, thin, foamy layer there. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head. But in terms of appearance, this one comes across as being really nice and bright. It's like a nice kind of bright yellow colour, actually. So yeah, I think it's fair to say this one does look pretty nice. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining the EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put in can also play a role in the colour of the beer, and any barrel aging that you do will affect it. Normally, when it comes to adding fruit to beer, you don't usually have to care about that with different kinds of IPA, but the Florida IPA can be a little bit different. I think it's fairly popular to put different fruits in the Florida IPA because of that sour characteristic that it has. And of course, there's these Berliner Weisses and Goses and things about there these days. These modern sour beers, quite a lot of breweries like to put different fruits in them. So I'm not sure with this one if the mango will have too much of an effect on the colour, but just be aware that it will do. If you put like raspberries or something in this, of course, it's going to come out with this sort of pink colour. But yeah, because of the light malts in this one, it does come across as appearing very much like a kind of nice mango juice. But remember, the level of haze in these sort of hazy IPAs we get depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and also the yeast to a degree as well. So yeah, few bits of food for thought there with this particular beer. But overall, it does look pretty nice. So nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. I have had 1 or 2 of these before, so I know roughly what they look like. They do tend to be tend to look similar to New England IPAs. But other than that, I don't think there's anything really to say about the appearance of this beer. So let's have a closer look at the aroma and see how we get on. Curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. Yeah, interesting. So it's actually not. First off, I would say it's not actually the most kind of pungent of aromas that you're getting out of this one, come to think of it. So I think it's definitely fair to say that it really doesn't smell all that different from some of the other IPAs we've had in recent times, that you don't get too much in the way of sourness and tartness in the aroma, so I'm hoping that it's going to show up a little bit more in the flavour actually. But yeah, I think with this beer, it really just smells like a bit of bread. There's a bit of green component in there. It's got a little touch of tartness, and then it's a bit of a soft fruitiness. The aroma of this beer is not too kind of pungent and punchy, I guess we could say. So that's kind of interesting. I would have expected something a wee bit different actually. But yeah, aroma-wise, it's certainly quite interesting for sure. We'll need to see how this plays out in the flavour. But yeah, let's try and break it down for you a wee bit more and just describe it. So the backbone of the malty side of this beer, there's a little bit of bread crust comes out of it. And on top of that, you're getting some white bread. And to be honest, it actually smells like a kind of fresh hedgehog roll that you'd get out of the bakers back in Scotland, actually. It really reminds me of that. There's a bit of a kind of dryness and a floury character to the bread crust in this one. But yeah, like I say, some nice kind of white bready character to this one. You can certainly get a little bit of the wheaty bitiness in the back of your nose as well, particularly when you take the aroma in a little bit more kind of deeply. Yeah, and when you do that, yeah, the wheatiness is at the back of the nose. I would say that the oats in this one, you can pick them up, but again, they're not overly prominent, and I'm not sure how common it is for the oats to be quite prominent in a Florida IPA. But you can certainly smell the oats in this are quite interesting. As I've told you in previous reviews, for me, when it comes to the New Englands, the oats are usually a good measure of how old the beer actually is, because you can smell them getting a little bit drier as the beer gets older in a sense. So there's a few interesting things going on with this one here in that regard. So you can smell there's a bit of creaminess to the oats, but there's a little bit of dryness in there as well, and all of that sits on top of that white of that kind of white bready layer actually. But there is an element of sweetness to this one, a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing. So yeah, a few wee interesting things going on there with this one actually. Yeah, I think that how would we say, the Yeah, how would you say? I think other than that, I don't really pick up anything else that we need to say about the malty side of the beer. Like I say, bread crust, white bread, bit of oats. It's got a bit of dryness to it and a bit of creaminess, but also there's a wee bit of that Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. Then you've got the wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose. So yeah, nothing else we need to say about the malty side of the beer. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then, and the fruity side of the beer. So, on the hoppy side of things, it's actually got quite a pungent green component to it. There's a lovely big floral aromatic sort of thing, but there's a little bit of a kind of earthy character for sure. So, yeah, a little bit of earthiness in the back of the nose, but then a lovely big bright floral aromaticity, and you've also got a nice bit of kind of grassy character as well. So, a little bit of a sort of grassy, a little bit of a sort of grassy, yeah, a little bit of grassy, zesty character for sure. And that's where the kind of tartness in this beer, the lemony, citricy tartness is starting to come out. So, yeah, the way that that goes together is also very, very nice. But, yeah, it's interesting for sure, definitely. So, yeah, I think I think the fruity side of this is quite interesting as well. It actually reminds me of a few of the Fever beers, but it's a little bit more kind of bready and maybe not quite as pungent as the Fevers that we had back in the day, the Passion Fever, the Mango Fever, and so on. I do miss those beers actually. Those are kind of some classics of the Swedish craft beer scene. But yeah, you can definitely smell that sort of soft mango in there, and then on top of that, you can smell. I think there's a bit of citra in this. I think there probably is quite a bit of citra in this beer just from the aroma, because you can smell that sort of lemon limey thing that citra gives you. So that really adds some pungency to the kind of citricy side of the beer. But yeah, it's got that sort of lemony tartness to it for sure. So yeah, aroma wise, this is a beer that's making me think a little bit. And it does remind me to a degree of some of the Fever beers we've had from Brewski before. So yeah, just take in mind that the malty character of this one is a wee bit different from what I've had from other Florida IPAs, but bear in mind it has been quite a long time since I've had an example of this style. But as I always say, take a bit of time to just enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into it. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this beer and just see how we go. So yeah, let's go for it. So this one is the Floripa, a 6.5% Florida IPA from Brewski Mikrobryggeri in Helsingborg in Skåne here in the south of Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, and cheers. That's quite interesting actually. It doesn't come across as overly tart, to be honest with you. That's the thing. I do remember the Florida IPAs having a little bit more kind of zippy and kind of tart character to them. But I will say it's a nice drinkable beer, this one, and it's good for a hot climate. Here it's kind of a strange time to release this one actually in Sweden. It's been released in December when it's cold and rainy and all of this. But this would be a really nice summer beer actually. I've said this, I feel like I've not said that on the channel for quite a wee while, but the Florida IPA would be a really nice one to release in the summer for sure. But yeah, I like this. Now the first question is going to be, is this the best beer I've had from Brewski? And even within the IPA category, and I'm not sure. I don't think so, to be honest. But it is still pretty solid. And for me, in terms of IPAs, one of the best IPAs I've ever had from these guys was the Conan Barbarian Double IPA. That's a beautiful, beautiful beer. That one. I wish that Brewski had a more kind of regular IPA. Their Fever series, they did their Fever series quite often, but in terms of just a straight up New England hazy IPA, then I wish that Brewski had one of these that could have been one of the classic Swedish New England IPAs, along with Amazing Haze, Narangi, GBG, New Sweden, and so on, because these guys were producing these beers really well along the same, at the same time that those breweries were. But yeah, this one, it really doesn't taste all that different to some of the other beers that we've had from Brewski in the past, but it's definitely up to the standards that we've had from them before. So yeah, this is interesting. It tastes a wee bit different. Like, it feels a little bit more bready to me but otherwise not too different from their other things. So yeah, the way this goes together is quite interesting. So let's just break the flavour down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So, as I say, it's actually, this is one of these ones that's actually quite similar to the aroma in terms of what it gives you in the flavour. But straight away, across the middle of your palate, then you get a nice little bit of a bread crusty note out of the beer. So we'll focus on middle third of your palate. You've got a wee bit of a bread crusty kind of base in there. On top of that, you can feel the white bready character. It's actually quite a dense white bready note that you get out of this one. But on top of that, there's a little bit of a kind of wheaty layer to the beer, so you can feel that the wheat actually has quite a smooth, kind of slightly dry effect in this beer. You can just feel that sort of densifies and thickens the bready layer in the beer. So yeah, again, I like how that goes together. So yeah, on top of that, on top of that, you have the oats. You can feel that the oats are quite interesting in this one, because on top of the wheaty layer, you can feel, as you go down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel a little bit of this almost slightly porridgey character out of this one. So I'm not sure how kind of fresh this beer actually is. And as I say, the oats always give you an idea of how old a beer is going to be. But down the middle line of your tongue, you can feel in the dead centre of your palate, you just get a little bit of that kind of porridgey thing from the oats. But then as you spread out towards the edges of the palate, you feel that the oats are a little bit sweeter and almost a little bit more kind of powdery and dry. So I do like that out of this beer. So yeah, the way that this one goes together is, again, very, very nice in that particular sense. The oats, the more that you drink of this beer, they do kind of sweeten up a little bit, and you get that sweeter side of them, but a wee bit of dryness out toward the edge of the palate for sure. But yeah, I think in the dead centre of your palate, in the very, very centre, there is like a wee tiny circle there, and you get a bit of that Werther's Original brown sugary, caramelly sort of thing out of the beer. So yeah, there are a few wee interesting things going on in this beer. For sure, which I can certainly appreciate. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. Yeah. So just trying to think, is there anything else we need to say about that middle third of the palate? I don't think so. But yeah, I think that covers everything. So bread crust, white bread, the wheat, the oats, and then a wee bit of sweetness in there. So yeah, let's focus on the back third of the palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of a bread crusty kind of quality, and that goes together really nicely. Then the base of the back third of your palate is the same. You get a wee bit more of that kind of grainy bread crusty character out of the beer, and it feels a little bit more grainy and intense. And on top of that, there's a wee bit of a white, you get that nice kind of white bready note out of it. It just feels a little bit thicker and a wee bit more grainy. Of course, as we always say, the more bitter grainy flavours come out toward the back of the palate, the sweeter ones come out more further forward. And then on top of that, you can feel the wheat, and I think the wheat is the most prominent part of the beer on the back third of your palate. So yeah, the wheaty side of this beer again is quite nice. But yeah, that wheaty bitiness that this beer has keeps in with the green component, which we'll come to in a minute. This beer does have a little bit of zip and a bit of bite to it, which was quite a common theme with a number of Brewski IPAs we've had in the past. But sitting on top of the wheaty part, there's a nice wee bit of a kind of bready, doughy sort of thing, so you can feel a bit of that sort of peppery, grainy, I don't know if peppery is the right word, but you get a bit of that kind of dry, grainy, dense, bready dough sort of thing, and that sits on top of the wheaty layer on the back third of your palate, so you can feel that the height of the flavour, on the back third of your palate is quite, is a little bit taller, but then as you come further forward, the beer just squishes together a little bit more. It just squishes together a wee bit more as you come further forward into that middle third of the palate. So yeah, that's quite a common thing. But let's focus on the fruity and hoppy side of this beer. So hoppy side of things, then definitely a wee touch of earthiness in the back corners of the palate here. So yeah, wee touch of earthiness there in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward, you get a wee bit of a kind of herbal character, and then as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, you get a little bit more of that, you do get a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity to the beer, but round the front curve of the palate, the beer is distinctly lighter and more grassy, and there is a fair wee bit of zestiness there, and you can feel the kind of tartness from the yeast coming out in this one as well. But yeah, biggest component of the floral side, of the green component for me, is that big floral side. You can feel that just lingering the further you go into the aftertaste. But let's focus on the front third of your palate then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. The base of that front third of your palate is a wee bit more kind of bread crusty. Yeah, so nice little bit of a smooth bread crusty sort of thing, wee bit of white bread, and sitting on top of that you've got the nice kind of juicy fruity esters. You just get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll the way out of the beer. Now I think with this beer, I'm pretty sure there's a bit of Citra in this and maybe something else like Galaxy. It could just be Citra on its own right enough, but the hoppy characters that you get out of this one are fairly pungent. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of a passion fruity quality, like quite a strong passion fruit. You know, you could potentially argue it's a bit of grapefruit, but you've got a bit of that pungency in there. And again, to me, that can come from something like Galaxy or Citra. But as you move further forward, it mellows out to be a little bit more mango-like. And as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, it really becomes quite a big lemon, limey, citricy type thing. So yeah, the lemon limey character and the zestiness you get out of this are quite quite pungent and zippy in a sense. So it's actually, what I would say about this beer is that it's only if you pay attention to the back of that front half, that front third of your palate, you can feel the sort of softness. Whenever you add fruit into a beer, it does a couple of things, but one of the things you'll notice with mango in particular, it gives you this kind of softness actually. It's a little bit like a smoothie kind of thing, and you can feel that coming out on the back of that front third of your palate the further you go into the aftertaste. But fruit, when you add fruit as an adjunct into beer, it always aggregates around the edges of your palate too and suppresses a wee bit of the green component. You can feel it doing that in this case. But when it comes to the Florida IPA, because you've got that yeast that has that slightly kind of citricy sour character to it, you still get quite a bit of zestiness on the front edges of your palate here with this one. So yeah, the front half of that front third of your palate, from the hoppy side of the beer, there's quite a citrusy, zesty, lemony, limey kind of thing. So there's a fair wee bit of that going on. I mean, you could have a bit of Centennial or something like that with the Citra in there, but there's just something telling me, there's something about the flavour of this beer that makes me think Citra, and I think you've got mango in on that as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this beer is Citra and just a shit ton of mango basically. But yeah, the way that all goes together is very nice. So yeah, like I say, a bit of grapefruit, bit of passion fruit, a juicy mango, and then lemon limey characters coming forward, and you've got that nice kind of citrusy, zesty sort of thing around the kind of front edges of the palate too. But overall, I think this is a very it is quite a nice beer, and I would say it's grown on me a little bit since we actually started the tasting. But I think this is one of these ones where it takes a little bit of time to get, and it's not a style that I drink all that often, but I would like to go down to Florida and have a look at some breweries such as J. Wakefield and stuff like this, and really get a feel as to what this style is supposed to be like actually. So yeah, I think this goes together really nicely in a sense. So I'd be curious to see if Brewski are going to keep up brewing a few of these things, particularly they've got that now that they have that tie with Tampa Bay Brewing Company. But yeah, I think that describes everything we need to say about the flavour. Let's round off the review with a quick look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, it's pretty similar to what we've had from Brewski in the past. It's definitely a mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got quite a wet mouthfeel to it actually, and it feels nice and clean. You expect this from Swedish beers, just the quality Swedish water that we have. But malty base, as we said, is kind of quite smooth, and this beer does actually have a wee bit of dryness to it the further you go into the aftertaste. In terms of IBUs and things, I think this is maybe about 40, I think there might be about 40 IBUs, but the thing with this beer is it does have quite a pungent floral component to it, and the citricy, zesty sort of character that it has gives you the impression of a slightly higher bitterness. The bitterness and the citricy, zesty sort of thing kind of merge into one in this particular beer, but you've also got quite a nice bit of juicy, fruity character, and as I say, a big zestiness to it. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. This one, it's grown on me the more that I've drunk of it. So like I say, I'd be curious to see a few more examples of this style from Brewski and from some of the original Florida breweries going forward. But yeah, definitely a cool review to do, and one that's made me think a little bit more. So I think we can leave it at that for this one. Nice smooth fruitiness and zestiness coming off this beer into the aftertaste too. But yeah, let's leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. This will be the last Swedish-Danish review that you'll see for a couple of weeks, because I'm going to go home to the motherland of Scotland for Christmas. So yeah, you'll see some more Swedish-Danish reviews sometime in the middle of January, so keep your eye open for those. But yeah, it's been really cool to review a few more Swedish-Danish things for you over the last few weeks, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed them. But this one was the Floripa, the Florida IPA at 6.5% ABV with mango from Brewski Mikrobryggeri in Helsingborg here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you soon. Slange, skull, cheers, and see you guys in the next review. I hope you enjoy the Scottish and Irish reviews and things coming up over the next little while. Cheers.